you've got those that, that believe that they are a fraud and aren't, and then those that aren't willing to admit that they might be.
Well, that is called Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you ever read about
I have
the Dunning-Kruger?
not. So that's not imposter syndrome.
No, it's just the opposite.
It is a cognitive bias where individuals with low competence in a specific area overestimate their abilities, while those with high competence tend to underestimate their own skills.
Yeah. And we've all met people like that.
Sure.
But they're completely oblivious because they're so self-confident that they're like, dude, it's like the emperor has no clothes. That's it. Dude, you're naked, but I have these beautiful clothes. You just can't see them. No, you're naked.
Yeah.
Dunning-Kruger.
The sound of that tractor means it's time for us to go to work. Welcome back to the Give Us the Dirt podcast, powered by Hoopod Grading. My name is Brandon, and I am your host. For those of you that have been listening for a while, you know that the Give Us the Dirt podcast has become known for giving us the real stories, the dirt, if you will, behind the people who literally build the world we live in. Today, we're going to dig into something that a lot of folks in our industry really don't like to talk about in their tailgate meetings. Something I call head trash, right? Those little voices inside our head that whisper, you're not smart enough. You just got lucky. One day they're going to find out that you really don't belong here. And I know we've all had that voice, and that voice doesn't care how many years you've been on the job, how many pieces of equipment you've run, or how many projects you've built. It is relentless. It's called imposter syndrome. And today we're not just talking about it. We've got someone here that's going to tell us how to silence it. Joining me in the studio today is my friend, Gary Frey, a seasoned CEO, a triathlete, drummer, proud family man. He's led 4 successful companies in his career, including bizjournals.com, where he grew a three-person team into a $100 million enterprise. These days, he's coaching business leaders, developing clients at a regional CPA firm, and co-hosting his own podcast called Anything But Typical Podcast, which is incredible. Check it out, where he dives into the real, raw stories behind entrepreneurial success. Gary's also the author of Silence the Imposter, a practical guide to shutting down that inner voice that tells you you're not good enough. If you've ever struggled with imposter syndrome, or if you don't even know what the heck it means, this is the conversation for you. So I'm excited to dig in. Gary, it's good to have you here. Welcome.
Brandon, it's hard to not smile looking at you, man. I mean, you're
Am I funny looking? Is that it? Is that what it is?
You're just one of the best human beings to walk the planet. I really mean that.
That's a soundbite right there,
It's
man.
the truth. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't.
Well, thank you. I think the same of you, man. It's fun to have somebody, come in here and match the energy word for word. And I love your energy. You come in ready to go.
Let's rock it.
Is this the first time you've been to the academy?
No, I've been to the academy a couple times because I got it.
That's right. We did that.
You were on our podcast.
Yeah.
The Anything But Typical podcast. And so we were really talking a lot about Dream on 3, but in that you also talked about the academy and what you built here. And I was like, I got to see this thing. And anybody that hasn't seen it, book a time if you can, because it's incredible. I mean, there's a reason you guys are leading your industry. It's by intentionality, it's by culture, and it's by excellence. And this place just ekes and reeks excellence.
Oh, man. Thank you for saying that. We love it. We're proud of it. Our team enjoys being here. They're proud of it, too. So it's we've enjoyed it, and I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I alluded to it in the intro, and we're going to dive into this thing called imposter syndrome. But if you had to define imposter syndrome according to Gary Frey.
Well, Gary Frey's definition isn't going to be very good. I find the history of it quite fascinating because it was in 1972, I was 10 years old at that time, that 2 female psychologists coined that term. And it was when they observed these phenomenon that were commonalities across high-achieving female clients of theirs. And they were these thoughts of, I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm in over my head, I really don't know what I'm doing. And if people just knew this or that about me, they'd reject me, or I'm even a fraud, right? These thoughts.
But it was predominantly women that were feeling this.
That was what they noticed among women. And I didn't even know this term until probably 4 years ago. But I know when I was 10 years old, I suffered from perfectionism. It wasn't because my parents were driving that. I was the oldest kid, kind of oldest kid syndrome, I guess. I don't know. And my folks kept trying to dial me back. But I just felt like I had to be perfect. And then I got teased of, being called Mr. Perfect when I was in junior high. And it wasn't that I was perfect. I was just tormented. And I was never good enough. Comparison, that whole comparison thing is a big, big thing. And we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. We didn't have any of that stuff. But the comparison trap was something that I fell into big time. And so I think the best visual description I've ever seen of this, which really hits the center of the bullseye on imposter syndrome, is this. So imagine a 1-inch circle, all right? And in that 1-inch circle, it says, what I know. But this 1-inch circle is surrounded by a 5-foot circle, big. And in the 5-foot circle, it says, what I think everyone else knows. Comparison. What I think I know, that 1-inch circle is dwarfed by this 5-foot circle of what I think everyone else knows. And what I've found is in our social media dominant society, which is really running amok, it's pushing this thing down into kids. They're dealing with it, but adults, we see the show reels of everybody else. And we compare our behind the scenes reels.
So true. That
we know. We know all the crud. We know all the outtakes that we would prefer to just, put in a dungeon and lock the key, lock it up, throw away the key. But that comparison is where we get into real trouble. And so I think between those two things, the definition or the kind of the phenomenon that the female psychologists were noticing, and that visual description, I think that really kind of nails it. And they say that at a minimum, 70% of the population, not just women, 70% of the population deal with it.
Yeah, so 70% of the people are struggling with
and they
imposter
think that's
syndrome.
Conservative.
That's surprising.
So my gut is, and I've worked for a narcissist and a sociopath. Sociopath's
Does that
bad.
number surprise you?
I think it's low.
Oh, you
really do.
actually think it's low?
I think it's low. Yeah, because here's what I've seen. Every CEO that I've either coached or walked alongside or worked for who dropped their guard with me deals with it. And I think part of the deal is we're walking into areas that we have never been before. So we don't know what they are, and we don't know what we're doing because it's new to us. We've never done it. But then we compare, and we think everybody else knows. Oh. And the revelation and the light bulb came on when Tana Green, who's also been on the podcast.
I love Tana.
I love Tana too. She's a very good CEO. And she pulls me aside, and I think it may have even been when we were recording her in 2020, early 2020 before lockdown. She said, Gary, I don't know what I'm doing.
And she was CEO at that time. Yeah, she of a
10,
very large company.
Employees, 10,000. And I said, Tana, why would you say that? And she said, I only have a 2-year secretarial degree. She was comparing what the pedigrees are of all the women CEOs in WPO, the Women's Presidents Organization, which is like YPO. Highfalutin, very accomplished women. And she's comparing her behind the scenes reels, which she wrote a book called Creating a World of Difference. But in that book, she reveals that she had a child out of wedlock at age 15, that she got married and had that baby. Good for her, Tana. But she married a guy that was abusive, and he beat her up so badly she was in the hospital. And while she's in the hospital, he abandons her and the baby. Oh, well, these are things that you don't really want to talk about in the South, much less anywhere. And then she wants to finish high school, but she doesn't want a GED, so she goes back to high school 2 years behind, which that takes some tremendous humility. Think about that. Yeah. You're going back 2 years behind your graduating class with kids that are younger than you, and you got baby on your hip. She goes back, and she always wanted to go to college, but she's a single parent at this point. She can't afford it, so she gets a 2-year secretarial degree. And she put that in this book called Creating a World of Difference. And I said, hey, Tana, and what's really funny, so I was coaching full-time with a guy named Robert Fish, one of the best coaches, I think, on the planet. And we were business partners. And he said, hey, if you ever get to meet Tana Green, because they were direct competitors in one of his companies, it was probably his third company, which was a staffing firm. And he said, if you ever get to meet Tana Green, she is like the gold standard. Well, sure enough, I got to meet her, had lunch with her, and she gave me her book. It's a beautiful little book. And she told me her story. And I was like, whoa. That took tremendous courage for her to do that.
Is that story in the book? Is she that vulnerable in the book?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
She exposed it. And that's why I feature her as weapon number 3, which is shine a light on it, which is that's why I'm wearing the courage
vulnerability.
T-shirt. Exactly. Because it takes tremendous amount of courage to do that. And I asked her, I said, Tana, when you wrote that book, like, one, that had to be kind of terrifying because this is stuff that you've been keeping in the shadows for a long time. You couldn't talk about this at WPO events.
No, that's the stuff, it doesn't make the reel.
No.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that you want to put in the dungeon and lock it away.
Right.
You know. And so I said, what was that like? Because, I mean, I can't imagine. Because you were holding this back for a long time. She said, oh, I was terrified. But she said what was really amazing is as soon as I released it and started talking about it, and she speaks about it now, especially about domestic abuse and that sort of thing, she said, it not only set me free, but it set a whole bunch of other people free.
Wow.
And those two things combined made me realize, wait a minute, I need to write about this. I'm not an expert in it, you know, I'm not. But I suffered from it for at least 53 years. So, well, not 53, because I really haven't. I mean, I've been able to shut it. You know, I've been able to punch it in the mouth a few times. And they're really simple things to do that. But the first thing is to realize, hey, first of all, realize you're not alone. That's weapon number 1. It's so simple. It's Kansas bonehead simple, man. But,
well, and that's interesting because I mean, who knows if you'd have written a book if you hadn't had that conversation with Tana?
I don't think I would have. I always thought if I was going to write a book, I would call it Sleeping with a Rhino because I was in partnership on my first turnaround and I caught my partner embezzling twice. And then he came at me like a raging rhino because I could have taken him down. I could have just completely destroyed his life. I thought, man, that's what I'm going to write a book about. I don't know that I'm ever going to write that book. But because we've been through tougher things than that, quite frankly.
Actually, sounds like a pretty cool book. I'd like to read The Raging Rhino.
Yeah, but this one, the reality when Tana, someone so accomplished, would say that.
Yeah.
And then it was just that. Then the realization of pattern, and so then quickly, like it was probably that same day I was thinking about it. And the first guy that I brought in as a client to BGW, first guy, he has 3 companies. He's wildly successful. He's in his early 40s. He works 10 hours a week total. That's it. And he plays golf the rest of the time because he loves playing golf. A lot of entrepreneurs I know
Not a bad gig.
don't do it, like, right? And he told me the same thing. He goes, man, I really don't know what I'm doing. I said, Brent, you have the life that some billionaires that I know would want your life. Working 10 hours a week and doing what you love to do, which is play golf. And like, you don't have to worry about money. And I said, why would you say that? And he said, I have no formal education, high school only.
Goes back to your circles, right?
Same thing.
Sees the whole
Same
world as
thing.
being having so much that degree automatically gives you all this knowledge and wisdom that you
Yes.
don't have.
Yeah. And, oh, well, look at this person. They have this, they have that. They know what they're doing. Like, you wouldn't believe how many CEOs don't even understand really their financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because they know their industry, they know their craft, and they're really good at it.
Yeah,
they don't have to know that. They need to have somebody
I've
that
got
works
great
for them that
CPAs.
does.
I've got great, yeah.
And maybe they could teach them some of that. But, like, no, nobody has it all together. Nobody.
Right. Isn't it funny? You know, because what we're talking about here, I mean, this is mental health.
Yeah, it
in
is.
essence, it's mental health.
It is.
And it's so wild that all it takes is that one person to say, hey, I don't have it all together. And then you hear, me too, me too.
Exactly.
I'm the same way. You're doing, and so it takes that one person, but then you realize that the whole room is full of imposters.
Yeah.
And
right.
everybody,
we're all walking around with masks.
Absolutely. And so that's really cool that she had the courage to do that, and that it inspired you to not only start to recall some of the conversations you've had with others that you've coached, but how it's impacted your life and your career.
Big time. Yeah.
You know, this is, you're on the Give Us a Dirt podcast. So, I mean, it's a different audience than what you're probably used to.
I don't know what I'm used to. I mean, I grew up driving tractors in the field before I could drive it.
Did you really?
Heck yeah.
Dude, I did. That did not come up in the bio.
Yeah. No, I was driving. At first, I was raking hay with an old Massey Ferguson. It was actually a Ferguson tractor. It wasn't a Massey. It was a Ferguson tractor, and I weighed so little that the seat kept me up like this. I couldn't, but I was probably 12. Raking hay, and then I graduated to big boy 40/20 John Deere, and then driving wheat trucks, and before I was street legal. So, no.
Man, look at you! I learned something new about you today. That's great. Well, you know exactly who you're talking to. We call them the dirties.
Yeah,
around here. But it's we got a great industry with some great people.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, does this? You're used to coaching CEOs. You're used to being in the office setting and boardroom, but you also are able to connect with people at all levels of life and different industries. How does this look in a blue collar industry?
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
You know what's interesting? There's a friend of mine that bought. He bought a number of companies, and one of them was a car wash. And he's like, "Oh man, this is going to be great. It's just turning money, blah blah blah." And he said what he didn't understand was the people that worked in this industry, they weren't motivated by money. They were motivated by respect.
Absolutely.
That was
Absolutely.
Because he was just trying to throw more money at him, and he wasn't getting any performance, and it was because respect. And he wasn't there. He was an absent owner, and realized, wait a minute, I got to impact the culture, and we got to address their fundamental need, which is respect.
That's so true. Because you don't see it as much in this industry. People aren't intimidated by the degrees.
Right.
They don't worry about the educational discrepancies. What separates you from the other person is your grit, your toughness, and that level of respect that you get from being on the job.
What did you graduate? What kind of piece of equipment did you earn the right to run?
Yeah. Which makes it really tough for somebody like who we work with day in and day out to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
To come in and say, hey, you know what? I feel like a fraud.
Right.
I don't feel good enough to be doing this.
Right. Then you're weak. You're a pansy, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, my grandfather who had the farm and all of his sons, and my mom was the oldest kid. So, and I lived in the town. I was a townie, so I wasn't part of them. And the town was 16,000 person rough little railroad town. But I was a townie,
So you were high roller.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, good grief, but I was not part of them. So same sort of thing, So my cousin, who was my age, his dad had a hog farm down the road from my grandfather's main dairy farm. Well, he was part of the group, and I never was, because I went home into the town, you know. So, man, I know. Yeah, I know.
So that becomes part of the lies that you believe.
Oh, heck yeah.
I was going to ask you, what are some of the lies that you heard growing up? What are some of the voices?
Especially I'm not good enough. You know, I was the last kid to be picked on sandlot baseball. Like, I couldn't throw to save my soul. Where I wanted it to go, it went the wrong way.
That
you know,
surprises me. I had you pegged for an athlete.
I was a swimmer. That was the only thing I could do. And I went into that in high school thinking, oh, this could be an easy letter because it was the first year and it was co-ed. And the coach was the person who flunked me out of beginner's swimming lessons when I was like 5 or 6. I didn't even want my head in the water, so I asked her if I could do breaststroke, keeping my head above the water. I literally had to learn how to breathe, and then I became a butterflyer. This is the craziest thing. Butterfly is the toughest of the strokes, but I felt like I was drowning, you know. And we were doing 2-a-days right away, but my hand-eye coordination, like I was a drummer, I'm good at that. But basketball, so-so, baseball, terrible. So I was the last kid to be picked most of the time. So again, you feel like I'm not worth anything, right? So, you know, and then swimming became kind of a good thing for me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to set the longest yardage and swim longer yards than anybody else. So every 4 years, and I was a 4-year letterman, but I swam more yards than anybody. I was just like, I'm going to grit through it. And it wasn't because I was the best. I just worked the hardest, I think. But it was always this trying to prove to somebody that I actually mattered when I didn't believe it myself. And that's the thing that haunts us, when we think we really don't matter.
I think that's a great point, Gary, that, you know, there's nothing wrong with grinding it out. There's nothing wrong with working hard and putting it in and trying to be the best. But who are you doing it for?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If we do it for the praises of men, it's a pretty shallow thing. It's a very short-lived and very hollow thing. Yeah. And that was the thing. And that's what you find, whether it be movie stars or whomever. When I was in private equity up in Ohio, in my 13 winters away from Charlotte, I don't recommend that tour of duty, but nonetheless, I learned a lot. But when I was up there, I realized that, because I was working with some really highfalutin people, and what I realized was even those guys, it's very lonely. Like, they didn't know who they could trust, and a lot of them felt like they got lucky. A lot of them would say, oh, I just, had the right team around me, which, of course, that's true. You got to have all that. But they completely discounted their own ability. And I got called out by a woman, very, very wealthy woman, who her parents were extremely wealthy. I mean, there are places at Auburn University named after her father. But she did not know it because they weren't raised with all this money. And she got married. Her husband died. She was a school teacher. She was like an elementary school teacher. And all of a sudden, she's got a child, and her husband dies, and like nothing. She didn't know that her daddy had a whole bunch of money. She had to figure it out. So she went and she made a ton of money on timber. Like, she's very smart. And one day, I was with her at her place in Cashiers, and she paid me a compliment, and I said, oh, Lucinda, I don't know about that. And she said, a simple thank you will suffice. Ooh, I felt.
She checked you.
Ooh, baby. But this false humility, like, we didn't know how to deal with that. And
just say thank you.
Yeah. She said, just a simple thank you will suffice.
I like that.
I was
That's
super
a gut punch,
embarrassed,
right?
Right? I was super embarrassed, but I'm like,
take the compliment.
Just do it, man. Yeah, it's like,
take the compliment.
But a lot of that was because
quit thinking you don't deserve it.
Worthy to be right. Like, who am I hanging around people like this? Yeah. I don't come from money.
There's not a chance that you're your dad's got his name on a building down in Auburn?
No, my father does not.
Mine doesn't either. Mine doesn't either. That would be a very well kept secret on his part. But what a gut punch right there.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned a few of the lies, and some of them, you know, you're not good enough. That makes sense. You know, you mentioned, hey, you just got lucky.
Yeah.
It's not you, it's your team. What are some of the other ones? You mentioned you coach a lot of high-powered CEOs.
Definitely in over my head.
In over my head.
Don't know what I'm doing. And then you have the things like what Tana was hiding for a long time. If people just knew this or that about me, they'd reject me. So what happens is that's the albatross that's around your neck that you're hanging around, and it's killing you. It's rotting on you, and it's rotting you.
Have you ever been in that situation where somebody says that and you're like, you know what? You might be right. You might not know what you're doing.
Well,
I mean, because that's the other side of this, right?
Yeah,
you know,
you've
got two sides of this imposter syndrome thing, right? You've got the one that believes they've got it all figured out.
Yeah.
But then the other one that I mean, they might be faking it.
Yeah. Well, the fake it till you make it is one of the stupidest things that you could ever do. Now, I get the heartbeat. Like, hey, you've never been here before, but just go with it. And there's times when I remember doing my first television commercial. I'm like, I'm in my 20s. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But I got to, pretend like I know what I'm doing.
Wait, what's the television commercial?
I was a designer early on in my career. I was a graphic designer. That was my background.
Another thing we missed in the bio. You've got all kind of stuff.
I'm a weird dude.
I love it.
Yeah. So, but it was that same thing. It's like, and so where's that balance of trying to instill confidence with your client that's paying you a bunch of money to do what you're supposed to do, but it's your first time?
Yeah.
That was a little tough.
That's tricky.
It is tricky, because if you just completely drop your guard, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. Why are you paying all this money to me?
Yeah.
That could be a bad thing.
No, it's tricky, and you've got those that are, that believe that they are a fraud.
Right.
And aren't.
Right.
And then those that aren't willing to admit that they might be.
Well, that is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you ever read about
I have
the
not.
Dunning-Kruger?
So that's not imposter syndrome.
No, it's just the opposite.
So the mask is not an imposter syndrome. It is like you hiding behind something.
Yeah. Or in Dunning-Kruger effect, what that is you have a heightened...
You're saying Dunn and Kruger?
Dunning, Dunning -Kruger. And I think it's just Kruger.
Kiana, can we pull that up? Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah, and the Dunning-Kruger. Have you ever seen the funny headstones of a guy that died? It said, "Watch this, hold my beer."
Yeah, yeah. Watch this, hold my beer. All right, here. What's it say? Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where individuals with low competence in a specific area overestimate their abilities, while those with high competence tend to underestimate their own skills.
Yes. So, watch this.
Hold my beer.
Is Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah.
And we've all met people like that.
Sure.
But they're completely oblivious because they're so self-confident that they're like, dude, it's like the emperor has no clothes. That's it. Dude, you're naked, but I have these beautiful clothes. You just can't see them. No, you're naked.
Yeah.
Dunning-Kruger.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Well, that's the difference.
We're learning something new
so
every
you got
day.
both sides of it.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about who you allow to speak into your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the spirit of the Dirt World podcast, let's envision that circle is our crew cab truck. Okay,
Got it. Yep.
Who do you let in your truck? What voices do you let in your truck? And then who do you kick out? Who do you kick out of the cab?
Well, if you're given the choice, because a lot of times you're not,
True.
but if you're given the choice, who's going to be in your circle? Who's in your cab?
What voices are the ones you
If
want in
somebody is draining your energy and your confidence, probably needs to be kicked out.
there? They got to go.
But if somebody's willing to tell you the truth, even though it may hurt, but you know that they love you, you better keep them close.
Truth with love.
Absolutely.
Keep them close.
You don't want somebody that's just, a yes man that's like sugarcoating everything, where you don't know you can really trust them because they're just schlacking everything. Like, I'd kick them out too, because they're patronizing. They're not being honest. So that's where it really comes down to what's trustworthy.
Ones that just blowing you up and just say, "Oh yeah, you're doing everything."
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. And
I imagine a lot of the CEOs you talk to have to deal with that too. You've got
Oh,
people.
heck yeah.
I mean, they're surrounded by people that are just sucking up to them.
big time, and very wealthy people have it even worse. They don't know who they can trust.
Kick them out of the cab.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever saw Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, right?
Oh, yeah.
I love that. But that's it. He trusted, one guy,
Yeah.
Arsenio, right? He trusted him, and he was the only one that knew he was actually a king. But he wanted somebody to love him for who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got to be who he was in a completely different environment. Now, that's freedom as far as I'm concerned. If you get to be who you uniquely are, and somebody loves you and cares about you and is willing to even call BS when it needs to be called, that's somebody is special. And that's a great place to be. If you get to be who you are, and you don't know if you're in the right place, because a lot of times people hide certain things, and they kind of bring half of themselves or a portion of themselves. But man,
Who's in your cab? Who do you have? You got a mentor or someone that?
man, I got a bunch of people. Most of them have been tried by fire. But yeah, I mean, my wife is definitely in my cab. 42 years of being married to her. That's a pretty big deal,
Yeah.
And I think both of my sons, they're grown. They're in my cab, like we can be. Think about who knows you best. They've seen all the warts. They've seen all the frailties.
Yeah.
They've seen all the screw-ups, and they're still with you. But I think I'm beyond blessed because I've got a number of people that I would consider very close friends, more than my fair share, quite frankly. And at the same time, I would say at some of my lowest times early on, especially after we moved to Charlotte, I felt all alone. I felt like, nobody was calling me. And man, we were really, we were on fumes. We were really sucking wind. And I'd just come off of a partner embezzlement. So I was really feeling lower than a snake's belly already, feeling like a super loser. But even in those times, what I learned in those times was sow into somebody else's life when they're not sowing into yours. Mm-hmm. Like there's something about in our own pain, when we're willing to invest in the lives of somebody else, when we're wishing somebody was investing in ours.
You don't have as much time to think about your own stuff at that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm actually glad I went through those moments where I felt all alone.
Well, and that's when you find out who your people are. That's you find out who you want in your cab. And I think that's a great point that you make in the book is, really being conscious of who those voices are.
Yeah.
Who you going to let in and who are you going to keep out? That's how you silence the imposter. You got to control what's getting through, the messages that are getting through. I think
that's really true. Those are really important. The other thing that I learned that I think is an extremely powerful tool, and it's so simple, but it's intentional gratitude. Being extremely intentional on gratitude.
Gratitude is a weapon that we don't use enough. It is hard to have a bad day if you start at being thankful for something.
Yeah. And I learned that one.
You do a good job of that. You really are.
Well, what's interesting about that is like I would say I'm definitely a more like glass is definitely more than half full. But I was not always that way. I was raised as I was a perfectionist, and as a designer, I picked apart everything. I could see the flaw in everything, and I still can. But and that can be a good thing, but it can also cut you. Like that sword can cut two ways. It can be good for good, or it could be used for evil. And I was tormented by the evil part too. But what I learned when we lost everything in 2009, firm blows up, $30 million worth of us wiped out. I had 2 kids in college. We didn't have the money. It was going to cost us $300,000 to go bankrupt for the company. CEO's ousted, who I thought was one of my closest friends, and he was a sociopath. I didn't even know what one was at the time. And if you look it up, it's just one click below a psychopath. Very dangerous. Very good at lying. And like all hell is breaking loose. We lost everything except for our house. And I'm like, there's no way to, like, there was no money to pay me. There was no money to keep my kids in college. All my savings, like, it's gone. And one of our board members kept me alive. And they said, Gary, we need you to help us shut down 11 offices, 90 people gone, and deal with all the lawsuits. Like, every day was a Groundhog Day of bad. And we'd invested in 2 Ponzi's on top of it, $2.2 billion and $500 million. I had money in that stuff, and I was getting letters on how I could sue my broker. I was the broker.
Oh, man.
So were 14 other investors that were friends of mine, and they still are, by God's grace. They were getting the same ambulance chasing, like, oh, well, you can recover some money. What? And they would all call me like, hey, what, have you gotten the same letter? And I'm like, yeah. And, well, what do you think? And I said, you can do what you want to do, and you might get some money back. But if you do it, we just found out that we have no directors and officers, D&O, or errors and omissions, E&O, insurance, because our CEO lied about that. So we were completely butt naked, which
what a
meant,
mess.
Oh, it was awful. So I was having night terrors at least 3 times a week. 2 a.m. seems to be the time when it hits. My heart rate was racing I'd click it and it'd be at 140 beats a minute, drenched in sweat, feeling like somebody's choking me. Well, I knew that was a spiritual thing too, but I'm like, I'm powerless against this. Like I called 2 friends of mine, 2 guys in my crew cab. Both have been through fire, and they are 2 of the most faithful men I have ever known. And I called each of them. One's in Charlotte, and I was up in Ohio at the time. The other one was in Boise, Idaho. And I said, guys, and it was like 3 months of this. Like within a week, our company went down. We had our bank accounts seized by a hostile creditor, sued for $30 million. Then we find out that one of the investments we made, Ponzi, and brilliant, it was devious. They were using HIPAA laws to prevent any forensic accounting, and it was a medical receivables company. Perfect track record for 13 years. Another one was a mineral rights deal. And Sinclair Oil was even in that one. And my last investor was a Sinclair Oil exec. They all got duped by these guys. I mean, it was incredible. Well, all this
one big scam.
This whole thing is just all, and that's all happened within a week. Boom, like everything's blowing up. And I said, why do I feel like a Raggedy Ann doll in the mouth of a Rottweiler, and my stuffing is all over the room?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about shaking your confidence. That's some
Big
heavy
time.
stuff.
Yeah, and I'd befriended a guy that spent 7 years in the Supermax for day trading fraud.
So all these voices are in your head. Gary,
Boom,
you did
boom,
this. Why didn't you see
boom.
this coming? Why
And
did you
then-
let this guy in?
And we have FINRA, which was the regulatory body, going through all of our emails They were doing a dragnet, and they sued our broker dealer $300,000. They were taking down anybody because this was on the heels of Madoff, right? So bad. And I told these guys, I said, listen, I have fasted, I have prayed, I've got scripture cards on fear. Why is this so why am I so powerless against this? And both of them said the same thing to me, and they don't even know each other. They said, Gary, it's about surrender. Can you trust God even if your worst fears come upon you? Can you trust him even if he doesn't deliver you? Oh, well, that was changing my prayer, because it was like, Lord, I know you can deliver me. Please deliver me.
And here's what I need.
Yeah.
Do these things.
I know you can. Will you please deliver? And wrong series of questions. Can you trust him? And then I realized I got to find something to be grateful for. Now, and what was really interesting is, like, when I hit surrender, it's like this combination. Surrender and finding something to be grateful for. It's not ignoring the lawsuits, because they were real.
It's real. That's real.
It wasn't ignoring, hey, well, do I get caught in this dragnet with what the CEO has done? I was on the leadership team. Sin of omission was really what was worrying me, because I knew sin of commission, of doing something, I didn't do anything. But sin of omission, and in the securities world, it's just as real as commission. But what was really interesting, surrender and finding, like, at least I can see. At least I can walk today. At least I've got somebody who loves me. My wife is like, it doesn't matter. We didn't have anything when we got married anyway. I can be grateful for that.
So powerful. Yeah, that's so powerful.
It doesn't ignore the difficulty.
No, and it doesn't minimize what you're going through. You're just choosing not to focus on it.
Exactly.
It's that next thought. It's that next choice. So, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to focus on that, or am I going to focus on these other 99 things that I am blessed with?
And it's super powerful. So I just started writing, today's a great day too. And then I would I would just like, oh, this scripture means something. Like,
today,
so I read that.
Great day to go on the Give Us the Dirt podcast.
It's a great day to be on Just the Dirt, or Give Us the Dirt. Yeah, I always want to say Just the Dirt, but Give Us the Dirt. But that really made a difference. And then fast forward to 2017. So that was in 2009. 2017, I get invited to go and be the first class through the BB&T Leadership Institute. They had just built a new campus, and I was the first class to go through it in the woods in Greensboro. Beautiful. It's $12,000 to go, and I was gifted that to go through it. Oh, very cool. And then I had to sign a confidentiality thing, because they peel back the onion. You go back to your eight-year-old self. So I can't talk about all of that, but the best thing that came out of that was 3 entries in a gratitude journal. I can talk about that. Every day, I'm grateful for ... followed by a thought or a prayer.
You do that every day?
Every day.
How long have you been doing that?
Since 2017.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Every day.
Because I was doing this. It's a great day too in 2009, and that really started changing things. But then when I saw the gratitude journal thing, and we went through that, it's so simple. Doesn't cost you anything. I mean, just a little. And what I do is I have a lot of journals, and I kept them all. Nobody's ever read them, and nobody probably ever will. Doesn't matter. But and what we found is that they call it NLP, for neuro-linguistic plasticity of our brain. So Brene Brown, a lot of these people that are.
I've heard about that. You can actually rewire your brain.
And gratitude, like, they have scientific studies to prove it now. It changes our body. It changes our makeup. Like, and I believe it. As a man thinks he is, so he is. I mean, and I'm not saying, like, well, I want to be, a Martian. I'm not saying that. But there are some, like, there's a power in our brain on what we choose to think about and what we choose to do. It's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah. You choose which lens you're going to view your situation in the world through. And you're choosing to look at it through a lens of gratitude.
Yeah. And I mean, It is incredible. It changes.
Hey, we got a new segment here.
Okay.
Okay. This is this segment is called Skid Steer Therapy. Okay.
Oh,
and
I think that would be so much fun.
Today's segment of Skid Steer Therapy is brought to you by Halftime Rentals, Charlotte's best porta potty provider. Okay, they actually left this shirt on my desk this morning. I'm not showing you the whole shirt. I'll show you, but I won't show it. You see it? Great. So Halftime Rentals, thank you for sponsoring our segment.
Halftime Rentals.
Skid Steer Therapy.
I love Gary, their sense of humor.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going to be in the porta potty business, you got to have a sense of humor, right?
Embrace what you got, right?
All right. So you're coach. You understand this imposter syndrome. Let's say we've got a foreman. I've got a superintendent that comes up to you, and let's just say this is a big dude. Okay,
Most of them are bigger than me anyway.
He's strong, like got a deep voice. I mean, he's an intimidating looking dude, and he comes up to you and he says, "Gary, I feel like I'm faking it every day." What do you do? What do you go first?
Ask him why. Why do you feel that way? Tell me more. You know, you got to start with.
So you
questions.
just go start pulling on that string. Just
Absolutely.
Let me see what I can get.
Yeah, and you know, if you prove to be trustworthy, like if somebody believes that you care, and I'll just even use the word love, that you love them, but that you care, all kinds of things, the guards drop. You can't really do anything while the guard's up. You know, there's a thing that was started here in town called F3 by David Redding. He's also been on the Anything But Typical podcast.
I've done that a few times. It's so early. What time do they do it?
They do it like 5:30 in the morning.
Well, that's not that
I'm
early. That's not that bad. I thought it was like
Sunday
4.
afternoon at 4:30 p.m.
Oh, they have
I'm
a
go to bed at
PM
midnight
version.
guy.
Okay.
And so that's the only Sunday afternoon.
What is it? It's faith, fitness,
and fellowship. And the reason he started that, I mean, this guy, Green Beret, stud.
Yeah.
And he's a litigator now. Don't mess with him. But he said that he called himself a sad clown. He said, clown face on the outside. Sounded like imposter to me.
Yeah.
But he was sad inside. He didn't really have any meaningful, deep relationships. And dudes like working out. And they don't like to talk about their feelings a lot. Big burly supervisor can't. You know, you got to show you're tough, show that you're the boss, whatever. But the reality is that big burly guy is still an 8-year-old boy underneath all of it. And that's one of the things that I did learn at BB&T Leadership Institute is there's a lot of stuff in our subconscious that goes back to when we were 8 years old.
Yeah. I think, you know, this is fascinating stuff. It's, you know, some of the things, so but you've got to, before you can utilize the tools that you lay out, you've got seven of them in here.
And they're really bonehead simple.
But to
really
get there,
simple.
They are, to get there, you've got to be vulnerable. Yeah. You got to be humble, and you've got to have some kind of foundation that is not built on your own abilities.
Very true. And
I think and I appreciate you bringing up your faith. You know me, you know part of my story. Right. Somebody asked me, this has probably been a couple of years ago. You know, they say, "What do you know? You're a leader over at Hoopah. You're a leader over at Dream on 3. What are some of your greatest strengths?" You ever gotten that question?
Yeah,
and I'm always uncomfortable answering that because I don't want to come across as, you know, I'm really good at this.
Yeah.
But what I have gotten really good at this stage of life in my career is knowing what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And being able to accept that, hey, I'm not supposed to be all things.
Right.
I can't do all things well.
Right.
I'm not supposed to be able to handle all those things. I had lunch today with a dear friend of mine that's in a leadership position, and I was telling him about this podcast. He said, "Brandon, to your point, 70%, right? It's probably low." Yeah. He said, "Brandon, I've been struggling with that." He said, "I am so stressed out." He said, I feel like I'm not doing good enough at this. He said, I can't get it all done. I'm under this constant stress. He said, I went to the bookstore and I was actually looking for stuff about head trash. How do I get rid of the head trash? I said, dude, you have got to listen to this podcast today. I said, Silence the Imposter right here. That is exactly what it is. But you've probably heard of this book. He said he had gone to the Inner Excellence. You heard of Inner Excellence?
I've heard of it. I have not read that book, though.
He was talking about that, but it's basically the same thing, just addressing some of the head trash that we have. And I guess the premise of it is that it all comes back to self-centeredness.
Yeah.
That we think we're supposed to be capable. We think that if we don't do it, nobody else will do it. That it depends on us. The fate of the company depends on me. Nobody can do it like I do it. It's easier if I just do it myself. Those kind of things that we're
initially, but it'll kill you.
It'll kill you. It'll kill you. And so it's, that's some of the head trash that we choose to believe. Some of that is ego, right? Some of that's our own self-centeredness and thinking that we are supposed to be all those things. But a lot of that is outside noise. That's coming in
and think about it. It takes humility to be able to tell your team, I need your help. And if you're a good leader, your team wants to help.
Yeah.
But they are not going to barge in and demand that you take things over. Now, I did have somebody that worked for me at Bank of America. She said, when's the last time you went running? And I said, I don't know, a couple days. And I said, why? She goes, I go, what do you mean by that? And she goes, hey, you're a little grumpy.
You were grumpy. She called it.
I said, really? And she goes, yeah, we could tell when you don't go run. I said, really? She goes, yeah, I'm going to take over your calendar. I'm like, really?
Elizabeth does that to me. She can tell. She said, hey, when'd you eat last?
Yeah.
She said, you're a little hangry, aren't you?
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Hungry, alone, halt, right? Lonely. What's the other one? I don't know. Tired. Yeah, those are things. But so she actually just took the reins and said, I'm going to put on your calendar, meet with Jim, and that meant get your butt to the GYM.
Oh, she put it on your calendar.
She put it on my calendar.
So
she took over my calendar, but it's like code meet with JIM meant get your butt to the GYM.
Yeah.
Oh, and that worked.
Because you were just white knuckling it through the day without taking any time to
70-hour
reset
every day, like every week, and no. So, but what I found is a good leader, when they're carrying too much, and they tell their team, "I need your help. Can you guys help me?" They'll rise up. The right people will rise up, and they'll be glad because they want to.
Yeah.
So
that's a great thing. I mean, it takes a lot of courage, like your shirt right there, to be able to say that. It takes being vulnerable. But I think people are willing to help you. And look, there's resources.
Yeah.
There's resources.
Simple.
There's 7 weapons right here to silence imposter syndrome that you've written out. And you say they're simple, but they're actually they're brilliant, in their simplicity. Like these are simple principles, but they're not simple to implement necessarily.
Well,
it takes
simple
discipline.
Doesn't mean easy.
Right.
And a lot of times the easy part is like, okay, so 3 entries in a gratitude journal. How much time does that take me every day? 5 minutes max.
Yeah.
But it sets the day. Pretty big.
Yeah.
There's another weapon in there that I think is really, really powerful. It's number 4. And it is focus more on serving than how you're perceived. Oh. And I learned that. I remember when our company was really faltering. We started feeling the effects of 2008 after September drop and the Great Recession was beginning. We were feeling it. And our vice chairman had been the treasurer of Walmart. He and Sam Walton were good buddies, and he was hired at 16 by Sam, ended up going to law school and all this stuff. But Randy Laney, And when things were rough, he's down in Little Rock. I mean, not Little Rock, in Rogers, Arkansas. He'd go, guys, I got to punch out. This is just too depressing for me. I got to go serve somebody. And that's what he did. He would go out and he saved men's lives, like literally, from suicide, all kinds of stuff. I mean, he is just a great giver. And I remember also when we were doing these events, there was a time the CEO, the psychopath or sociopath, he was a tough, he was a, supposedly, we saw pictures, but he was a A-10 Warthog pilot. And he was extremely demanding. So we would do these 3-day events for these very wealthy people. And I was in charge of planning them, and I was the MC. And then he would pick apart after we would do 3 days, and then we'd do a 2-day leadership team meeting, wherever this, it was in San Antonio or wherever we were at 2 or 3 times a year. Then he would post-mortem and just rip me a new one, like, you didn't say this, whatever. And so it was just like, oh, man. And so I remember writing in my prayer journal the night before a big event, before I had to fly out, because it was all on my shoulders. And I said, Lord, I feel like Moses, give me Aaron, because I can't speak, because what I noticed is I would look out in the crowd and I could see somebody, if they were messing with their phone, I could see if they're like dozing off, whatever, distracted. And it made me like I can sense it and I could see it, and it just made me even more nervous, like, ah. And I said, I'm slow of speech. Who am I? What am I doing? And I'm just lamenting this thing. And part of it was when I was president of bizjournals.com, we had, my chairman was the former chairman of Dow Jones and Wall Street Journal, Ray Shaw. Man of very few words, but man, we did these 360-degree feedbacks, or 180s, I don't know what they were, but and I had to travel all over the country with these 41 business journals and I would have to talk about, and I was going into kind of hostile territory. They thought we were a big threat, because anything .com at that time in 2000 was worth more than anything real, right? So I was going into some hostile territories anyway, and one of the feedback cards was, and Ray got them all, and then he gave them to me. Oh, that's good. And it said, Gary is great one-on-one, but in front of large groups, not so much. Knife.
Yeah, how'd that feel?
Oh, man, that was embarrassing. And it haunted me. That was in 2000. Now I'm fast forward, and this is like 2007, 2008, and I'm going, Lord, what am I doing? And I didn't hear an audible voice, but this thought hit me and rang my bell. It said, a servant is not to be concerned about how they're perceived. A servant is to be concerned about serving. Go serve them.
Go serve. Go serve. And you're talking, and we talked about that. Like, if you want to get away from the self-centeredness that draws us back to the lies that we listen to and that haunt us every day, focus your energy and effort on serving.
Exactly.
Somebody else.
You can't have your focus on 2 things at the same time.
Right. Right.
That was and that was liberating. Weapon. It was that was a massive move for me, because sure enough, I'm doing the opening keynote. I'm welcoming people, and I can see people tuning me out, and I'm like, I remember, you just serve them.
Yes, sir.
And at the end of that event, a woman who had retired early from McDonald's, she Kathy Henry out of Oklahoma, she came up to me and she said, hey, we were going through the dessert line. She said, I want you to know, I know what it takes to pull off an event like this. She goes, I did it for all of our franchises all over the world. There's like thousands of people in this thing. And she said, but nobody does it better than you. And she said, you're so good in front of people. And I wanted to just drop to my knees and laugh.
That lady went into the gratitude journal the next day, didn't she?
You better believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, but think about it. But the only thing that shifted for me was mindset.
Right.
Focus on serving them, Gary. I was not worried about, well, what do they think about me?
Right. It wasn't a performance.
Am I wearing
anymore.
a nice enough suit? Because I couldn't hang with those people.
Well, let me tell you this. There's nobody you can't hang with. You are incredible leader. You're an incredible coach. I am grateful that you came in here and spent some time with us today. It's always, man, I get so fueled up just by listening to you each time. The book has been amazing.
Thank you.
I keep a copy in my office. I got a copy at home. I wish I'd had one with me today because I'd give it to my friend at lunch. But
oh man!
But it's powerful stuff, Gary, and you do an incredible job. I'm grateful for you. I'm inspired by your courage and your ability to speak into this and to continue coaching others on how to deal with something that we are all dealing with at some level. Yeah. So, man, and you're just a freaking stud, man. It's you're killing it. If I do it half as good at 63 as you are, then, man, I'll be in good shape. So, man, thank you for coming in and being on the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
If you haven't already, go check out the book. It's called Silence the Imposter. And you can get this Amazon?
Amazon. It's the only place.
Wow, you get everything.
Yeah.
That's where you get it all.
Yeah, you can get your Insta junk on Amazon too. Like in 2 days, you got Insta junk.
Gary, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
That one definitely hit a little bit different than our typical Give Us the Dirt podcast. And if you're listening right now and you're thinking, you know what, I've said some of those same lies to myself, just know that you're not alone. Whether you're wearing steel-toe boots or a blazer, that voice of doubt can creep in. But truth is, you've earned your seat, you've done the work, and you belong. Big thanks to Gary Frey for helping us name it, face it, and shut down that imposter. If this episode hit home with you, don't keep it to yourself. Text it to someone on your team or your crew that needs to hear it. Post it up, tag us, break the silence in this industry, and normalize giving ourselves some credit. And hey, if you've got a moment, leave us a review, hit the follow button, and as always, thanks for getting dirty with us.